Man, oh man. This fucking pay-per-view. Hey everyone, this is Michael again, and welcome to my review of Crown Jewel. And this Crown Jewel was held from King Saud University Stadium in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. And of course, this was WWE's second pay-per-view event being held in Saudi Arabia. And there was there was some controversy surrounding this pay-per-view, and one of them was this from what I heard, this journalist by the name of Jamal Khashoggi, I think that's how you pronounce the last name. No, I might be pronouncing it wrongly, but he was a journalist for the Washington Post, and he ended up getting killed by the Saudi agents. And with that happening, WWE had faced calls to cancel the event and not hold it in Saudi Arabia. And there was rumors saying that if WWE ended up moving the pay-per-view, they would move it to the UK. They were thinking about moving it there. Hell, there was even rumors, saying that, the pay-per-view could have been held here in New York. But fortunately, because of this controversy, WWE, had to, erase all references to Saudi Arabia, meaning they weren't going to mention Saudi Arabia as the event's location. And that's why, when Crown Jewel was mentioned, on WWE shows, like on Raw or SmackDown, and the crowd booing at the name, that's why. And this is also why, Daniel Bryan and John Cena, they didn't want to go to Saudi Arabia to compete. And but unfortunately, WWE still confirmed that the show would go on, but of course they weren't mentioning Saudi Arabia. But tonight they just mentioned like the city it was in, Riyadh. So there was just that talk of the city tonight, but of course no mention of Saudi Arabia. And people here in the YWC, they weren't going to watch this pay-per-view. I think some of them, some were, but majority of the YWC here, we're going to skip this show because of that. But I was still going to cover Crown Jewel, so I'm covering it right now. But man, oh man, this show should be called Crown Shit, because this show was fucking god awful. This show was piece of shit. To me, this overtook Backlash as my #1 spot for worst pay-per-views of this year. So I think Crown Jewel to me goes at #1 as my worst pay-per-view of this year. Originally it was Backlash, but after seeing this, even though Backlash was a shitty pay-per-view, I would have to put Backlash as my #2, Crown Jewel as #1 right now, and Extreme Rules. Well, even though it was a bad show, even though Extreme Rules was a bad show, I think I would put it at my #3. So it was my top 3, worst WWE pay-per-views this year. So, but yeah, let's get on with this show. I don't want to talk too much about it because it was just a god awful piece of shit show. And this whole World Cup tournament, when I get to it, this whole World Cup tournament was a complete fucking joke. And I'm going to get to that. So let's get on with the review. I'm going to start with the kickoff match that was on the pre-show. it was Shinsuke Nakamura versus Rusev for the United States Championship. And this match itself, it was a pretty decent match between Nakamura and Rusev. Nakamura was working on Rusev throughout this, throughout some parts of the match. But Rusev had some points in this match. Him taking over the match. But in the end, Nakamura ended up winning the match because Rusev had Nakamura in the accolade, and Nakamura then bumped his head and low blowed Rusev, and it led to Nakamura end up hitting the Kinshasa to Rusev, and so Shinsuke Nakamura ends up retaining the United States Championship in a very sort of controversial finish, as what they called it, as what the Michael Cole called it. So yeah, but all in all, it was a decent match. And then the show got underway, and the show kicked off with Hulk Hogan coming out. Hulk Hogan hasn't been seen since 2015. He hasn't been seen on WWE TV since 2015 because we all know what happened with Hulk Hogan, and that whole scandal that he had. So, but it was cool seeing Hogan again. We haven't seen him since 2015, so it was good seeing him once again. But he was out there, and he was on the mic saying how he's glad to be out here in front of the fans. He goes on to say that it's awesome to be back here in the WWE and be the host of the show tonight. So, well, yeah, he came out to that, but like I said, happy seeing Hogan again. So, and the crowd was behind Hogan. The Saudi Arabian crowd was was behind cheering for Hogan. And so these matches were the first round of the World Cup tournament, and these matches, they just ran short. They were short kind of matches. They weren't long though. I mean, these matches should have went on for much longer, but WWE ended up keeping these first round matches at a short pace. So that's one problem with this pay-per-view so far, today. So, but the first match, it was Rey Mysterio versus Randy Orton, and this was okay match. I mean, Rey Mysterio was working Randy Orton, and at the end of the match, Rey Mysterio ended up winning the match because Randy Orton was going for a RKO, but Mysterio ended up pinning Randy Orton, and that was basically the end of the match. But then you had, after the match, Randy Orton ended up laying out Rey Mysterio with the RKO. Orton then threw Rey Mysterio onto the floor, and we saw just when he did that, Rey went flying out of the ring, and we saw Orton then fling Mysterio into the announce table, into the Arabic announce table. So that was pretty much what happened after the match. All in all, the match itself, it was okay, but short. And then The Miz was backstage. Byron Saxton was interviewing him. Miz says, he's going to walk through Jeff Hardy in the first round and a broken down Mysterio to go through the finals. And he feels awesome. So that was, the backstage little interview with The Miz. Then it was The Miz versus Jeff Hardy, which was, a decent match. But same outcome. It was a very short match. But The Miz was, entertaining in the match. Jeff Hardy, I really like Jeff Hardy, in the match. But The Miz ended up winning the match because Jeff Hardy was going to hit the twist of fate, and then The Miz countered it and hit the skull crushing finale to Jeff Hardy. So The Miz wins. The Miz, advances to the semifinals. Same with Mysterio. Mysterio also competed in the semifinals. So, but yeah, all in all, it was a decent match, but very short. Then we had Seth Rollins, Bobby Lashley. This match was, oh god, it was just Seth Rollins. It was Seth Rollins dominating through the whole match against Bobby Lashley, and Bobby Lashley had Leo Rush out there. Only good thing was Leo Rush wasn't even on the mic. He wasn't chanting Lashley, Lashley. What he does. But Seth Rollins ended up getting the win. He ended up hitting the stomp to Bobby Lashley. So Seth Rollins advances to the semifinals of the World Cup tournament. And that was that. But the match itself, it was all just Seth Rollins dominating. So you had points where Lashley, was dominating for a little bit, but it was majority of Seth Rollins. Then you had Byron Saxton interviewing Kurt Angle about him possibly proving to be the best in the world. And Kurt Angle says, people doubted him on winning this tournament. And he goes on to say that he's here to, write the next chapter and prove to everyone and Dolph Ziggler that he is the best in the world. So it was pretty cool interview with Kurt Angle. And then, we went to the match. Kurt Angle versus Dolph Ziggler. And, this match, it was pretty okay. I mean, same thing. The match was short. But we all knew that Kurt Angle was possibly not going to win the World Cup tournament. We all knew that. So, but Dolph Ziggler was out there. He came out there with Drew McIntyre. So, Dolph Ziggler, Kurt Angle was, decent, was, enjoyable. But Dolph Ziggler ended up getting the win. He ended up hitting Kurt Angle with the zigzag. So, Dolph Ziggler ended up winning the match, moving on to the semifinals. So, but yeah, all those okay match, but same thing, short match. Then we had the Bar versus the New Day for the SmackDown Tag Team Championships, and we saw the New Day make their entrance. They made their entrance, and they were on like a high like magic carpet ride, which was just bringing them to the ring. So that was pretty cool seeing that. And of course, Cesaro and Sheamus came out, and Big Show came out there. But the match itself, it was entertaining. Wasn't a bad match between them. For the New Day, it was Kofi Kingston and Big E taking on Cesaro and Sheamus. But it was decent. You had the Big Show, out there. He was coaching. He was sort of coaching Cesaro and Sheamus because we heard his mouth go. But the end of the match, we saw the Big Show end up hitting a KO punch to Big E. Sheamus then ended up hitting the Brogue Kick, also to Big E. Went for the pin, and Cesaro and Sheamus win the match. They still retain the SmackDown Tag Team Championships. So, oh no, it was an entertaining match. It was decent. Then we had The Miz, was also getting interviewed again by Byron Saxton. He said he told that he was going to beat Jeff Hardy, and he beat him. Sorry about that, but I was saying, The Miz was, being interviewed once again by Byron Saxton. And The Miz says that he was going to beat Jeff Hardy, and he ended up beating him. And he says he's going to beat Mysterio and prove that he is the best in the world. And so then we had the match. It was The Miz versus Rey Mysterio. And Mysterio, of course, was entertaining in this match. This was for, now all these matches were for the semifinals for the World Cup tournament. But Mysterio, like I said, was entertaining. Rey Mysterio, at the end of the match, he ended up hitting the 619 to The Miz. And Mysterio was going to go for the frog splash in honor of Eddie Guerrero. Mysterio went for it. Miz ended up getting up his knees. His knees ended up hitting Mysterio. And Miz went for the pin. 3, and then The Miz won the match. So The Miz, was going to the final match in the World Cup tournament. So, but that was that. Then we had Dolph Ziggler versus Seth Rollins. This, was a decent match, but the crowd for this match really, they weren't even into this match for some reason. But Dolph and Seth ended up putting on, a decent match. It was, entertaining at best, though. But we had Dolph Ziggler and Seth Rollins. They were, going back and forth during the match. Dolph Ziggler ended up winning the match because Seth Rollins was on the top. Drew McIntyre ended up pushing Seth off the top, and led to Dolph end up hitting the super kick to Seth, and so Dolph Ziggler ends up winning. Moves on to the final match. So it was The Miz versus Dolph Ziggler in the final to determine who would be the best in the world. So, and then we had after the match, Byron Saxton ended up coming out, interviewed Dolph. Dolph says, he's been saying the same thing for 13 years because, nobody ever thought that, that he would win this match, and possibly nobody even cared that Dolph won the match. And he ends up going on to say that nobody cared about him, and he says he is the best in the world. And so they just walked to the back, him and McIntyre. And then we had after that we had AJ Styles versus Samoa Joe for the WWE Championship. This match, it was okay. Wasn't that bad of a match though. But with this, that they're gonna make AJ hold the title, longer and try for Styles to beat CM Punk's reign as WWE champion. I can see that's what WWE is is going to do, or is what they are doing. So, but I would like to see Samoa Joe win the title, but apparently at the end of the match, Styles ended up hitting the phenomenal forearm to Joe, but it kind of looked, that phenomenal forearm looked very weak in my opinion. Though, but AJ Styles wins the match, still retains the WWE Championship. So, but pretty much I know that Styles and Joe are possibly going to go at it again. They're possibly going to have another match. But who knows? Maybe at Survivor Series. Oh, well. Possibly not at Survivor Series, though. But who knows? But I know that they're going to have, another match together. I could picture WWE, continuing their feud. And then we had, oh my God. Then we had Braun Strowman versus Brock Lesnar for the Universal Championship. Before the match, Baron Corbin ended up coming out, to watch the match. But this match was, this wasn't even a match, in my opinion. This was not even a fucking match. You had Brock Lesnar and Braun Strowman in the ring. Brock Lesnar already, well, I'll get to that. Baron Corbin is in the ring. He ends up hitting Strowman with the Universal Championship, and then it gives Brock Lesnar, the chance to hit the F5 on Strowman. Strowman kicks out of that. Lesnar ends up hitting another F5. Strowman ends up kicking out of that. Lesnar then hits a third F5. Strowman ends up kicking out of that. Basically, this match was just Brock Lesnar, F5, 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 F5. 5 F5s it took for Brock Lesnar to put down Strowman. And yes, after that, Brock Lesnar won the match and is the Universal Champion once again. I gotta say this. The Universal Championship is fucking useless right now. It's fucking useless. It shows that Brock Lesnar is only here for the money, and we're not going to get the Universal Championship put on the line until maybe WrestleMania. At this point, I think WWE should just, retire the Universal Championship, because this proves that they don't give a shit about this title. So, once again, Brock Lesnar wins it. He's going to be out for 6 months. He won't even defend the title until WrestleMania. Like I said, this Universal title is fucking useless. And it should be retired. If WWE doesn't give a shit about the Universal Championship, fucking retire it. So yeah, it was a shit match. It's a piece of shit match. It made Braun Strowman look fucking weak. And at this point, Braun Strowman, they killed him. They killed Braun Strowman. And, he's never going to get another opportunity for the Universal Championship. So yeah, so then we had The Miz versus Dolph Ziggler. This was for the best in the world, to determine who is the best in the world. And sorry about that once again, but next it was The Miz versus Dolph Ziggler to determine who is the best in the world. That was and then during this match, the match never really got underway because it was The Miz and Dolph Ziggler battling it out. One thing that they did good was the referee ended up sending Drew McIntyre to the back. So it would just be, one-on-one with The Miz and Dolph Ziggler. So, this was, like a heel versus heel type, scenario match, but never fully got underway because they were, battling it out outside. The Miz ended up getting injured, and I think this is Miz's first injury. So, because Shane McMahon was out there, and Shane was like, are you, will you be able to go on? And then Miz was like, oh yeah, I could go on, but apparently, the ref looked at Miz and didn't want Miz to go on with the match, so the ref was going to call it off. So which that would have been worthless. This whole build up for this World Cup tournament. And Shane was like, don't announce it, because apparently, I guess he didn't want a Raw superstar winning the match. And so, the ring announcer, I forgot his name, but he was like, your winner, this match. And then Shane was like, not telling him to announce it. And Shane then, this is where this tournament turned into a fucking joke. Shane ends up saying, oh yeah, I'll compete against Dolph Ziggler. And so, he replaces Miz. Shane gets in the ring, and the match gets underway. Shane versus Dolph Ziggler. And I'm like, Shane just, put himself in this match without competing. And this is where I'm like, oh yeah, oh okay, this pay-per-view fucking sucks, because this is where this whole tournament went, got to being a fucking joke when Shane ended up coming in. So Shane ends up, taking down Dolph, throwing the punches with the elbow, and then, he launches Dolph into the turnbuckle. Shane then hits the coast to coast on Dolph Ziggler, pins Dolph, gets the 3 count. There you go. Shane McMahon is the best in the world. What? This whole tournament was a fucking joke. WWE made this tournament a fucking joke. Like, who the fuck booked this? This is WWE creative booking stupidity. This is stupid booking right there. To book who is going to be the best in the world. And you go with Shane? Unbelievable. Moving on. And then it was the main event. Triple H and Shawn Michaels. Of course, DX versus the Brothers of Destruction, Undertaker and Kane. This was, enjoyable main event. This wasn't that bad of a match. And, Shawn Michaels, yes, Shawn Michaels balled wrestling. And he ended up looking, different as, he was, as when he was in the ring, wrestling down Kane and Taker. The baldness, I'm like, oh, is this Shawn Michaels? It kind of threw me off, a little bit, though. But Triple H and Michaels, proved that, they still got it, along with Undertaker and Kane. And it's really sad that Triple H and Shawn Michaels and Kane and Undertaker work, a lot good and better than 75% of the roster that they have, that WWE has nowadays. But we saw in the match, Kane end up chokeslamming Triple H through the announce table. And Triple H right from there was then, didn't appear for this match until later on. So it was basically all Shawn Michaels taking down Kane and Undertaker, and proved that Shawn Michaels still has it. He didn't have no ring rust, because this was Shawn Michaels' in-ring return. In 8 years. He retired back in 2010. So it's been 8 years since Shawn Michaels stepped foot in the ring and had a match. So, but he was basically controlling the match, because Triple H was taken down after being chokeslammed through the announce table by Kane. And we saw Shawn Michaels end up hitting a moonsault, end up doing his famous moonsault. And it was really funny was like when he went to the top, he was like, oh, what the hell? And then he just did the moonsault onto Taker and Kane, which always looks amazing. Before he hit that, he was just hitting Kane, and he ended up knocking Kane's mask off. So, I mean, that was pretty funny. I didn't expect him throwing the punches and knocking Kane's mask off. So, but then Triple H got back into the match. Triple H and Shawn Michaels, they were both working on Taker and Kane. One thing I forgot to mention was Shawn Michaels had the NXT logo on his pants, which that was cool to see if he spotted that. So yeah, Shawn Michaels knows what the better brand is. So, but at the end of the match, you had Undertaker and Kane. They were going for a double tombstone. Shawn Michaels ended up grabbing Kane's mask, and Shawn Michaels ended up sweet chin music in Kane, and it led to Triple H end up hitting the pedigree on Kane. So they got the pin, and Triple H and Shawn Michaels end up winning the match, which was awesome. So, and then you saw at the end, Triple H and Shawn Michaels were hugging it out. Shawn Michaels' face was bleeding. So, but so yeah. So also, I forgot to mention in this match, Shawn Michaels he ended up sweet chin music in Kane, because Triple H was in the Hell's Gate that was locked in by Undertaker. Sorry about that again, but like I was saying, Kane, Triple H was in Hell's Gate that was locked in by the Undertaker, and Shawn Michaels sweet chin music Kane, and it led to Kane falling back and breaking the Hell's Gate. So that was cool to see. But Triple H and Shawn Michaels, they still got they still have it. Very impressed that Shawn Michaels. We didn't see Shawn Michaels have any ring rust on him. So, but yeah, overall, it was an enjoyable main event. But like out of a whole, this whole pay-per-view, it felt boring. It was a piece of shit. The first round matches were short. They should have been a whole lot longer. But and then Brock Lesnar, win the Universal Championship once again. Did we really need Brock Lesnar win again? Which proves the Universal Championship is completely useless. So yeah. So anyways, that's it for my review of Crown Jewel, or as I would say, Crown Shit. So yeah. So hope you all enjoyed this review. Thank you all for watching, and definitely give this video a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, and until the next video, I'll see you all later.